Developing story out of Jets camp. You see Adam Schefter's tweet. Justin Fields dealing with a dislocated toe. He was carted off the field during practice. Here's head coach Aaron Glenn with more on Fields.
Justin went down with toe in the right side of his foot. I know it's a quick throw. I'm assuming someone stepped on his toe. It had to be because of the nature of the call that we had as far as offensive play call. So no matter what the situation is, no matter what happens with any player that gets hurt, man, we got to keep moving. This league is not going to stop just because of injuries.
Our Jets reporter Rich Cimini was at practice today, all in the middle of all of this. Rich, what more can you tell us about the Fields injury?
Well, it's crisis averted. The Jets got wet. There were a couple of scary moments for sure when he was limping off and getting loaded into that cart, which took him to the locker room. But soon after practice, the Jets were getting word from early testing that it is a dislocated toe. They released a statement saying it's not a significant injury. They do not expect him to miss significant time. In fact, they're calling him day to day. So this really could have been a lot worse. I know social media of Jet fans were in a panic state when this first happened around 9:30 this morning. They've had a number of fluky quarterback injuries in recent years. Most recently, Aaron Rodgers 2 years ago. So I'm sure Achilles was probably flashing in the minds of some fans. But the one thing that told me that it wasn't major was he got into the passenger seat of the cart. He wasn't laying in the back like you so often see athletes when they're taken out of the stadium. He was in the passenger seat, and he walked into the building under his own power. So that was the first sign that it was not a disaster, and the Jets later confirmed that it was not. He is day to day.
All right, thanks so much to Rich. I mean, what a roller coaster today, like Rich was saying, for Jets fans. We've got Lindsey Theory here. We've got Damian Woody, Mina Kimes as well. D. Wood, I felt bad for Jets fans at one point today. I'm like, please help this to not be some terrible thing, and for Justin Fields. But if he ends up being okay, he may miss a little bit of time at camp. You heard Rich saying he's day-to-day. How much does that hamper this offensive install this summer?
I don't think it really hampers it at all, because you talk about a guy in Justin Fields who was there, all throughout OTAs, mini camp. So he was taking a lot of reps this whole offseason. And Laura, when you think about this Jets offense, they're going to build this thing around his athletic ability and their offensive line and that backfield. They're going to run the ball a ton. So, listen, as far as the passing game is concerned, he might miss a few days here and there. This thing is going to be all about the running game.
Yeah, I agree. I think if he misses any time, my biggest concern is just that time is needed for their new offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, to figure out how to meld his offense. He comes from Detroit with what Fields does best, because he's not going to come in and hit copy-paste on the Lions offense, ask Fields to go under center, throw over the middle of the field at that high play action rate. That's not who Justin Fields is as a quarterback. So they need this time, I think, for there to be sort of a meeting of the minds. But I'm with Damian. This whole thing starts in the backfield. And I do think there's case for optimism there, by the way. This Jets offensive line I view as ascending. Young players, a tackle, of course. And then Fields himself just opens up things so much for that outside zone rushing attack because of his dual threat ability and threat to keep. But, of course, he can't do that if he's not healthy, so his health is paramount. Yeah, the health, right. That's the biggest question. Toe injuries, Lindsey, have a lot of range in terms of impacting players. What have you learned from your time covering the league that may inform what we would see here?
I didn't think when I woke up this morning,
about toes.
Talking about toes, but here we are.
Here we are.
Joey Bosa, a couple years ago, I actually immediately thought of him because he fractured the left big toe on his foot, and he actually played through it. He had like a hard shell that he put on, and obviously at his position, that's one where you're going to have to push off and use that foot and that big toe. A different injury than what Justin Fields is dealing with, but that does tell you, if you're comparing toes to toes, that it might not all be bad here for Justin Fields as he tries to recover quickly and get back into practice.
I think anybody at home, not everybody at home is an elite athlete like Justin Fields. We can all relate to what it feels like if you hurt your toe. So keep an eye on Justin Fields' toe. Let's look around the league as all 32 teams are in training camp. Look at Malik Neighbors. This is an incredible catch made, of course, at Giants camp. So keeping an eye on Neighbors, and they did name Russ the starting quarterback there yesterday. We have seen a good bit, though, of Jackson Dart as well. And how about Falcons camp? Michael Penix Jr. to Kyle Pitts. That's a connection that the Falcons are hoping continues to have great benefits for this offense. Getting Kyle Pitts to reach that full potential to be great for this offense. And then there's Aaron Rodgers, his first practice out there with the Steelers. He's getting ready to go, showing what he can do. And this was just moments ago. And in fact, right after this, he spoke with the media. So here's more from Aaron Rodgers after he just finished practice.
think most of the 32 teams would probably say something to that accord at this time of the year. But I think that there's really only 6 to 8 that really have a legitimate chance. Sometimes it's 10 to 12, and there's teams that surprise you. But I would say on paper we're probably one of those 10 to 12.
All right, so Lindsay, how much should we expect to see from Rodgers on the field this summer leading up to week 1?
Yeah, I'm told that he's expressed a willingness to play in the preseason, but they're really just playing it by ear. They want to practice. As you heard before, Mike Tomlin has said that he is a workaholic, but they want to do whatever they can to get him ready, whatever he feels he needs to get ready. That's what they're going to do. So there's no firm plan in place right now when it comes to looking ahead to the preseason games and exactly where they see Aaron Rodgers fitting into that.
Yeah, Damien, Rodgers' preferred style is much different, right, than the offenses that we've seen from Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator, over the years. They know each other, though. How do you see these two meshing?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about an Aaron Rodgers style offense, it's very stoic. There's not a lot of motion. Everything is static and stuff like that. Whereas Arthur Smith, he wants to incorporate motions, different personnel groupings. So I do think there's been a meeting of the minds this offseason, kind of mesh the two systems together to ultimately make Aaron Rodgers feel as comfortable as possible. I think the one thing that you're going to see in this Steelers offense, you're going to see that two tight end personnel grouping a lot, because I think Aaron Rodgers throughout his career has had a lot of success with two tight ends on the field. Obviously, we saw the Pittsburgh Steelers trade for Jonnu Smith to go with Pat Freiermuth. I think that will be the personnel group that'll get cooking a lot in this situation.
I think you might see 3, by the way, with Darnell Washington as a blocker / kind of de facto offensive lineman. To me, the one thing that Rodgers and Arthur Smith should agree on is the importance of running the football. If this offense has Aaron Rodgers throwing it 30-plus times a game, I can tell you right now it's not going to be successful. They have to be a run-first team, and that's something that they've invested in, right? In the 3rd round of the draft this year, the Steelers took Caleb Johnson, who I think is a really good fit for Arthur Smith's outside zone run scheme. The interior of the offensive line has been excellent. They've drafted really well there. It's those tackles, I think, that could determine whether or not this is successful on the ground. Broderick Jones firmly entrenched on the left side. Troy Fautanu coming back from an injury season. That's where this thing sinks or swims, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because Damien's on the show today, but I really feel like they got to run the ball better, and it starts with the young offensive line.
Yeah, listen, we like to play the indignant, but facts mean it either way. As we all know, Rodgers opens the season versus his former team in the Jets. The scriptwriter, conspiracy theorists are like, what is that? But I'm curious, how good is this Steelers team going to be? Are they one of the 8 teams that could win the Super Bowl in your mind?
I always say, when people ask me, are they a Super Bowl contender? I'll tell people every time, if you make the playoff, you have a chance. Okay. Coach always told us, you make the tournament, you have an opportunity. I think that the real key for the Pittsburgh Steelers is, Mina already touched on it, how well can they run the football and protect Aaron Rodgers? Again, you're asking a 42, soon to be 42-year-old quarterback to take you places that you don't see many 40-year-old quarterbacks go outside of Tom Brady. So they got to be able to establish a line of scrimmage in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think the challenging thing is I view them as the 3rd best team in their own division, right? I know Bengals have major issues on defense, but that should be a top 5 offense. So when you look at it from that point of view, you're competing with maybe the Broncos and the Chargers for a wild card spot. This is a team that obviously was in the postseason last year with up and down quarterback play, and that gives you some hope. But Aaron Rodgers isn't just a 40-plus old quarterback. He's a 40-plus old quarterback coming off of one of the worst seasons of his career, and that gives me a little bit of skepticism about the whole thing.
Yeah, it's worth noting the numbers in the last few seasons. And let's get to some top stories here, as a couple major names still not at camp. We got Lindsay here for the latest. Get us started with Terry McLaurin out in Washington.
Laura, you mentioned Terry McLaurin still not at camp as he seeks a new deal, but Adam Peters says they've had some good conversations. Dan Quinn, on the other hand, saying that this is not something he's going to get too worked up about. This is the business side of football. Of course, they would like to see Terry McLaurin back in camp sooner rather than later.
And then, how about Trey Hendrickson?
Trey Hendrickson still in Jacksonville, hanging out on the beach trading for football, even though he's not at training camp. Obviously, he is holding out. He wants a new extension in Cincinnati. They got deals up for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. No update, or I should say no progress on a contract for Trey Hendrickson, so time ticks on in Cincinnati.
We're going to keep an eye on that for sure. Hendrickson led the league with 7 best in the league. And Joe Burrow and the Bengals have started slow out of the gate. Burrow has won just 38% of his games in weeks 1 through 5, compared to winning almost 2/3 of his starts from week 6 on. His total QBR, touchdown to interception ratio, and yards per attempt are all significantly higher after he gets past week 5. The Bengals face the Browns and Jaguars in the first 2 weeks and then have to face Minnesota, Denver, and Detroit the following 3 weeks. Just significantly important to get those first couple wins. New on NFL Live, All-Pro wideout Jamar Chase has high expectations for the season, including a fast start.
Win the division first. That's how we do it all every year. Win the first game. That's how we're going to make a mark.
All right. Lindsay, what more can you tell us about Zach Taylor's preseason plan that may help him start a little bit faster?
So they want to get going a lot faster, right? So Joe Burrow is actually planning to play more in the preseason than he ever has before. Exactly how much that is, Zach Taylor hasn't said, but it's more than it's been in the past. And this is really interesting, Laura, because there's two kind of schools of thought. Now, you either play your starters in the preseason or you don't, right? Do you wrap your quarterback in bubble wrap or keep them out there in the fire? And I know Zach Taylor coming up under Sean McVay, he saw both sides work. In 2017, Sean McVay played all of his starters, and that offense was absolutely humming. In 2018, he didn't play his starters, and they went to the Super Bowl. So there's no exact science to this, and it seems like Zach Taylor is really trying to figure out what works best to get them going fast.
Yeah, Lindsay makes a really good point bringing up the Rams example, because there's really no one-size-fits-all answer to this. We always have this discussion in the preseason. Should you play your starters? Does it work? And my answer is always, it depends on the preference of the player. I know when I watch Patrick Mahomes in the preseason, and he does play in the preseason, I'm always like covering half of my face because I can barely stand to see him. It makes me so nervous, but clearly that has worked for him. Tom Brady sometimes played in the preseason. In my opinion, it really comes down to the personal preference of Joe Burrow. If he feels like he needs it to get a faster start, if he wants to build that chemistry early on, I don't know if it's chemistry at this point, they played together a long time, then more power to him. And, obviously that comes with a little bit of risk, but it's football. There's going to be risk, and I feel like ultimately it's up to the player.
Whatever they've been doing, it ain't working. so listen, obviously we've talked about, Patrick Mahomes playing in preseason. The other guys have been bubble wrapped. And so I think, it seemed like Joe Burrow is kind of taking the bull by the horns here and saying, you know what? I need to change my approach to how I get prepared for the season. Yeah. And if that means playing more in the preseason, so be it. If Joe Burrow's going to want to be out there, guess who else is going to be out there? All the other starters are going to be out there as well.